So let's move on to something else entirely. I have forgotten. Yes.
Another film?
Another film dumped onto Netflix. Well, it was a Netflix original actually, but still, I just think this was another that was supposed to have been in theatres, didn't end up in theatres. Is there a reason, Scott?
Yes, we're speaking of Velvet Buzzsaw, and the trailer for which looked mildly interesting, as it seeked from an art criticism to bloody horror, but the real draw was Jake Gyllenhaal starring in another film written and directed by Dan Gilmore, a la Nightcrawler. Could they rebottle that lightning? Spoilers, no.
No.
Now, at this point, I'd normally devote a few paragraphs to the film's plot, but to be honest, it'd be a waste of everyone's time.
Evil magic paintings. There you go.
No,
Plot synopsis.
Drew may disagree, but not for once because I think it's all that badly done in and of itself. It's just that it sets up so many strands that are ultimately unresolved, unless you count killing the protagonists for unrelated reasons a resolution. I don't think it's worth a lot of time, but in a nutshell, Gyllenhaal inhabits Mort van de Walt, a highly influential art critic whose word can make or break careers. He goes about his routine, interacting with other artists, agents and gallery owners like Renee Rousseau's Rodora Hayes. Finding his love life with his boyfriend unfulfilling, he starts one with his friend and employee of Hayes's, Zoe Ashton's Josephina. And for a while it trucks along, examining the generally unsavoury or ridiculous lives and relationships of these people, before taking a hard left when an elderly gent in Josephina's apartment building dies, leaving behind a body of dark, disturbing art that, spoilers, is haunted, and somehow causes other art to be haunted, which then kills people with no regard to any internal logic, rhyme or reason. Now, it's not entirely clear for a while that random murder is the path that this film's committing to, as for a while it seems to be aiming for some more investigative look at the artist's life as Morphy searches a book before abandoning that, or at the psychological toll this takes on the survivors as people start showing up dead in grisly tableaus before abandoning that, or how it affects the already strange relationships of the leads before abandoning that. All strands abandoned in favour of an admittedly often fun murderous special effect, but this does leave this film feeling like a directionless waste of time and effort. I'd heard some take recently disliking this as it was pushing a message of criticism being inherently worthless and the like, and feeling it was a thin-skinned reaction piece from Gilmore's part, but I think this is giving the film far too much credit because I don't think I don't think it's anything like cohesive or thought out enough to be accused of holding any sort of message at all. Really, this is very much less than some of its parts, and the thing of it is, a lot of those parts by themselves I kind of liked. I mean, the acting is reasonable, with support from the likes of Toni Collette and John Malkovich, and they're all quite interesting. The characters are all interesting in various ways, and they're nothing like as one note as the trailer might lead you to believe. And the production value is quite high for everything apart from the script, which feels like 4 decent enough story ideas passed through a wood chipper and reassembled at random, and is ultimately just a waste of everyone's time that doesn't deserve a great deal of analysis. So, let's not do that. Frustratingly, it's not to say that I hated watching Velvet Buzzsaw. The performances and the characters are good enough for me to have it pass muster as a casual watch, but I absolutely hate thinking about Velvet Buzzsaw. It's very much a film that gets less enjoyable with every second spent thinking about it, so yes, let's not.
Yeah, this might shock you, Scott, but I didn't hate it.
I'm surprised. But Gyllenhaal is an interesting character, and he does it quite well. It's just that the film he's found himself in is bad.
I don't. I like Jake Gyllenhaal a lot, and Nightcrawler I think is one of the best films of the last decade. But I don't know. I just didn't enjoy his character in that. It felt out of character for him. I didn't feel he inhabited that role well, though it was potentially interesting. And I say I didn't hate it because I watched it and I sighed a lot and I was teetering on being bored, but I didn't hate it. And I think it saved itself from its production value. It looked really nice. It's a very visually appealing film, and certainly it verges towards being I don't that idea about criticism being worthless. That's nonsense. But in terms of being a critique of the vapidity of people in the art world, absolutely, it's quite scathing in some points. And that it's like, oh, somebody's died. Let me think it's part of the exhibit, or somebody's died. But yes, business goes on and things, and it's about how shallow these people are. Though you could apply that to so many worlds, particularly any world where a lot of money's involved.
Yeah,
it's I don't know. You said about it being like one of the strands that it lets go of is how people are reacting to these horrible things happening. I actually think it never got to that, especially given it's that the girl from Stranger Things that keeps finding the body, and that seemed to be more like a comedy trope or a comedy angle than anything else, because every time she changes job, somebody dies. And it was like a running joke. So it didn't feel like it was anything about how people react with that. It was the same person just kept finding grisly deaths. Yeah, it's just, I don't think I really had anything to say.
No, it felt like a waste of everyone's time. It feels like...
Particularly John Malkovich.
Yeah, there's so much talent there, and there's ideas there, there's characters there, but none of it meshes to move anything forward. And it's just like, I don't know, is this a satire or is it a horror film? If it's a horror film, how come there's no logic to anything that's happening? And I mean, we've got a low opinion of horror films in general, but I mean, the good ones at least have the good sense to set up some sort of rules where something could happen. But just in this, anything can happen. And it doesn't. So there's no real tension or investment that you could possibly have. So it falls back in being a satire or a comedy. And it's just not either funny enough or satirical enough to stand on that leg either. So it just doesn't really fit any criterion. It just sort of
it has
wanders around and gets lost and then gets forgotten about.
It has no internal logic, because if it was just like, somehow, yes, the art pieces, and at least if they were the art pieces of the one artist, then yes, okay, but as you say, this seems to infect other stuff, but also it switches on abandoned petrol stations in the middle of the night.
Yes, because petrol stations are art. Yes.
It's what a waste in particular of John Malkovich, though, because even something like
John Bird Box Malkovich.
Yes, even in something like Bird Box, he's one of the very few positive things about Bird Box. And he still doesn't get enough to do in that film, but he's great. In this, he's largely doodling on sand. He doesn't have an awful lot to do. Which is a real pity. The other thing is, and this was bothering me through the whole film too, why the name? They call the film Velvet Buzzsaw, so you think, well, that's going to be significant. And then you got one of the major characters who's in a band called Velvet Buzzsaw. I think, well, that's significant. And then you see, like, another reference to it.
Sounded cool.
There's art of her band on the wall. Well, that's significant. In the end, no. I mean, there's one other reference to Velvet Buzzsaw, but it has nothing to do with the whole grand scheme of the film.
No.
It's just one in a list of a type of thing that happens. Well, why is it called Velvet Buzzsaw? Why did you seem to be focusing on that so heavily at the start of the film as if that was significant? It means nothing. It has nothing to do with the film.
Sounds like the kind of title that was picked just to suggest more depth than there actually is.
Well, because it sounds good. Yeah, so,
contrast.
Yes, a sharp thing that's all soft and smooth. Ha ha ha, we are clever.
Light and dark.
The name makes no sense. But because of the name...
Hot ice cream.
And because so early in the film they make another reference to it with one of the major characters, I'm like, well, it's significant then. So I'm thinking, trying to look for hints to it throughout the film, and it was nothing in the end. So actually it's a bad title. Because it makes you think that it's, and not in like a useful way of misdirecting you or anything. It's just like, stupid. It's not awful, but it's not good in any way, other than perhaps visually.
Yes. It's on the Twitters, at Blake Wrights, Perpetual Dub Machine, roughly I'm the Host podcast weighing in. Velvet Buzzsaw felt like Art Show Confidential rewritten from a silly creep show, Tales from the Crypt horror irony. Don't know if the two halves are blended well enough. No, they're definitely not.
For the 4 quarters really than the 2 halves, I think.
He said the personalities on display are scathingly accurate to life and pettiness makes them good monster fodder. Yes, I suppose that was really the most joy I got out of this was seeing some quite inventive deaths, which I suppose is all you can ask for in a film that doesn't really come up with anything else to say.
It's quite a shallow film that seemed to think it was deeper, I think.
Yeah.
It's not.
It was clearly in search. It was grasping for some sort of meaning and not actually getting its hands around anything. And it just felt like a bit of a waste in that. It's a bit of a shame, but there's probably enough time spent on that one.